right, so we got the sawmill finally all the way out here. It's all palletized, traveled pretty well, I think. Got a little smushed by the straps, but I think we're all good. And theoretically, this is the entire sawmill package, Norwood HD 38. It's got the full hydraulic setup, setworks, and trailer package, so should be pretty cool. This is Mike.
We're gonna assemble this thing.
Yeah, we're gonna put it together.
Right over here it says open this box first. So we're gonna open that one first.
I guess we'll just start there.
And theoretically the assembly instructions are in the box. And this thing came all the way from New York to Alaska. Finally got it out here in the middle of nowhere. We're out we're on the McCarthy Road at Long Lake, Alaska. So we're gonna put this thing together. Let's see what's in this box. Take it over here. Let's see what we got. We're gonna have a lot of cardboard.
That's a fact.
To burn. We're all caked up with bug dope, and mosquitoes are pretty vicious. Oh, here we go. Look at that. Original instructions. Read this manual and the engine manual before using the equipment. But anyways, that's what it's going to look like when we're done. And we'll be making ourselves some lumber.
Yeah.
Instead of buying it. And build some stuff. We got lots of stuff to build.
That's right. Awesome. Oh, we got a hat.
Oh. Shit, are we supposed to wear that while we're...
I guess so. Someone's got to wear. I already got a hat on. I think that's your hat.
I guess...
You'll be the Norwood rep.
We're going to wear a hat?
Before we get started.
Put on the hat.
Okay, here we go. This is pertinent information. Cool. Thank you for the notification. All right, now we're legit. We're ready to go.
Yeah, we're Norwood.
Thanks, Norwood, for the swag. We should have told you to send two, but that's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get stuck into it.
So we're just going to lay this all out.
Yeah, get a general sense of order before we start tearing into everything. Make sure it's all here, and then we'll start slapping it together.
So we're reading the instructions and kind of breaking this all apart and trying to figure out what's what. It takes a little bit to understand how the instructions are laid out and stuff. But we're starting to get the cross pieces laid out, and then it just tells you what to do to bolt these flanges on. And it took us a minute to figure out where the hardware was. The hardware's in box 17, and so that's pretty cool. It looks like pretty much all of the hardware fasteners are in this box. And as you get into it, you begin to understand how the instructions work more. And so it's starting to come together. It was a little bit confusing at first, just because there's so many boxes, and some of them are numbered for different systems. Like we've got an edger. A lot of the edger stuff was on that pallet, and it's numbered differently than the actual main sawmill assembly. So we're beginning to make sense of it, and it's starting to come together as far as beginning the process of assembling this thing.
All right, we had a minor crisis here. I think we've averted it, but if you look, the standard log deck has 4 of these ribs going across it. And these are the splices and the rails that you get for that. But we have 2 more ribs with our additional 2 4-foot log deck extensions with the attachments that we have. But we couldn't find the rails and these flanges for them.
These guys.
Yeah, so we were a little panicked, and so we started to dig through all of the boxes. I think we got about 3/4 of the way through them. There's some we haven't opened yet, but we got a jackpot. The rest of our flanges there. And we have all of our rails and extensions. So we're back in business.
Yeah, we thought we were going to get held up there. But fortunately, that we found this stuff.
Back on track.
Yeah.
Well, we got the deck assembled. There she is.
It only took 4 hours.
Yep. Probably 300 bolts. These are all just finger tight right now. We'll roll it up on its side and get the jack stands in place on both sides, and then we can pick the whole thing up and make sure it's all coplanar, flat and straight. And then we'll cinch everything down real tight and lock it in place permanently. But it's a good start. We're nibbling into the mountain of stuff we got to build. Starting to look like something.
I'm actually pretty impressed with that bug dope that I'm using. It works pretty good.
Which one's that?
I don't know, it's just a deep woods off.
Yeah. Alright, so after many evolutions here, we have this whole deck level, and it's in a pretty straight line. It's going to straighten up a little bit when we tighten it, but what we've been doing is getting these top rails perfectly flat with this laser level right here. We've been getting them perfectly flat at all these joints so that when the saw head travels down the track, it doesn't jump anywhere. And that was a lot of work. It was probably a little more than we anticipated, but it's pretty good. And now we got all of these top bolts tightened, and this rail is nice and tight. So now Mike was just checking this last log dog connection right there. And then we're gonna go through the face of these sides and tighten all these guys because they're just finger tight right now. And what that's gonna do is close everything up, lock this side together flat, and then we're going to move on to the other side. It should be just about perfect. That's where we left it.
In the manual it said to do it with a string, tie a string, but since we had these laser levels, it made more sense and it seemed like it was more accurate to do that. So that's why we're doing it with the laser levels.
Yeah, digital string is also an option. So yeah, it seemed to work for us. Let's get her tightened up and see how she looks. All right, it's about 11 o'clock. We're calling it for the day, but we got our deck assembled. It's just finger tight right now, but with the jacks on, it's moving under its own power now, which is pretty cool. We can flatten it out and put the rest of the components in. There's a couple of cross pieces for the log dog supports. We got the tongue for the trailer. There's an axle back there. Yeah, quite a few more things to go on, but pretty good start for the day. Not mad about it. Got a whole mountain of boxes still, but we're chipping away, so it's all good.
Okay, so now we've got these log dog assemblies installed and in place, and just by following the directions in the book, it does get a little bit confusing. And then we got to the part where we put these fender brackets and this stop bracket in for where the axle is going to be. There's a stop here for the unit that rolls back and forth for the towing situation, and so we just kind of skipped ahead on there because it seemed like things were a little bit out of order in the book. So we're going to kind of come back to that when we get the assembly on the unit. So now we switched up here to the tongue, putting the tongue on, and on that part you got to make sure that this only goes one way in order for the receiver hitch to fit. You can see you can see that the holes are higher on one side. We started and had this upside down and couldn't get the receiver hitch on. Now it looks like we'll be able to get her put together. So yeah, we're scratching our head as we go here, and it is somewhat confusing. So if you get stuck, you know, just keep reading through and trying to understand it. And they do have customer service if you get to a part where you can't figure out what's going on. So far, we haven't had to actually call them, but we're definitely scratching our head in a couple places here, trying to make sense of the instructions. But it's working okay so far.
All right, so we got the whole deck assembled, tightened down. We got the tongue for the trailer put on. We decided to hold off on the axle for just a minute. We're gonna skip ahead and get the saw head carriage put together and start seeing what that entails. So we got our boxes over here and we're breaking into it. Mike's making sense of these panels.
Yeah, that goes like that. Bolts and the hardware. The hardware for this was in a separate box. So yeah, so we sorting through that, but just keeping with the instructions. Again, this is for a stand. The instructions are for the standard mill, and this one is extended, and so we're holding off on some stuff and moving forward until we can make sense of how it's all going to come together, because we're not sure about the log loader and where the axle is and if it will interfere. So we're going to hold off on the axle and assemble this part and get into the hydraulics, and then backtrack to the axle later when we figure that out.
Yeah, so for the time being, we got a new project to get stuck into. This is going to take a little bit. It's fairly technical coming together here, but getting the business into the mill put together.
Yeah, this is the, just starting at the beginning here, it's the saw head carriage assembly. So that's what we're working on right now. They want you to lay it out on a flat surface with blocks. We don't really have a lot of flat surface, and we're using some firewood here, and we'll see if we can make it work. We're gonna get this assembled now. Some of these threaded holes, it's galvanized, so the threads can get, because it was tapped before it was galvanized or powder coated, and so some of these threaded holes, they give you a tap to clean the threads out, and we were doing it with a wrench one at a time, but there's a bunch of holes here that need to be cleaned out, so we thought, well, I wonder how we put this in a drill and just take it real easy so we don't get cross-threaded, but we'll clean these out with this tap that comes with the package. Yeah, threads are definitely dinged up on these. You got to be real careful not to cross-thread it. So we made some more progress on here. We got this unit mounted, this electric motor, this water tank, and various other. It was sort of complicated, and so we didn't really document our way through it. We just had to kind of take our time, and we actually took a day off, and now we're getting back to it and getting these cable stuff in place. And so this is the whole carriage and saw head assembly, and now we're going to pull the engine out of the box.
Let's check it out. We're on to the next phase here, the engine and saw head assembly.
This is an exhaust. And owner's manual, introduction, read through all that, they say. And there's a Honda, 27 horsepower Honda GX800.
Yeah, Sweet.
So yeah, so we're gonna install this engine on the saw head, and that's where we're at. Box 13 cover panel coming out. Norwood. Guess we'll install that. Okay, we're making some more progress here. We got the battery installed. We got the engine on. We got the fuel tank on. And then we've got the height controller here for the unit. So it moves, so you can adjust the depth of your cut, so this thing can go up or down. So we've got action. We've got some controls beginning to come together. The wiring and all of the instructions and everything didn't exactly go how it said in the book. We ran into a few problems where we didn't have the right hardware that we couldn't find, and there was some mix-up, and so there was a little bit of head scratching going on. We had to actually come up with some of our own hardware, like this rectifier that mounts right here. They said they had self-tapping bolts to hold that in, but we couldn't find the right the holes were too big for the self-tapping bolts that they provided. So we had to come up with our own hardware on that, which was kind of lame. There was a couple other things, like the battery box is held in with self-tapping bolts, and it's supposed to have 4, and we only had 2. And we couldn't find we couldn't match the numbers to the bags and the boxes and figure out where the parts were. So it was a little bit of confusion there, but we managed to get it figured out and together. And we got the water tank installed, and so we're just hooking up more of the mechanical parts of the machine. We haven't got to any of the hydraulics yet, or the blade, or any of that. But we are making progress and doing a little head scratching. I really couldn't make this into a exact instructional video because we couldn't even really make that much sense of the instructions ourselves without kind of limping along and figuring it out as we go. So it is a little bit challenging, but it can be done, and we're moving forward. Okay, we're getting to the end of the base sawmill assembly. I think the last step is to put these blades on and get everything aligned and all that. Finish the water, hook up, put the wheels on, put these wheels right here actually have a V-belt inside of them that the blade rides around. Initially put this one on backwards and caught that, and so this is the drive system right here from the engine. Drives the unit that spins the blades that are going to go on here. So we got all this stuff installed. One thing that we decided, made an executive decision, there's these things called safety limit switches that mount on here that make it so that the machine won't run unless the cover is on. But we were short on hardware and mounting holes for those, and it was very vague on that. And I don't know, in my experience, a lot of safety switches end up just being a hassle because we're not stupid enough to try and start this machine without the cover on it. So we just decided to bypass those, and I guess you could do that at your own discretion. But yeah, so we're on this unit, we're not using safety limit switches for the cover because we're smarter than doing that anyways, and starting it and running it without the cover on it. That's be stupid. So there was a lot of other things that the directions was pretty vague on, like this bolt right here they called for a 3/8 bolt, and it ended up, it was all plumbed and tapped for a 7/16 bolt, which they gave us, but they forgot to mention that in the instructions. So in the assembly of this thing, I think what's happening is the machine is evolving, but they haven't updated the instructions as much. So they've done improvements to the machine and not necessarily nailed it in the instructions. So you have to kind of puzzle your way through it as you go and just use common sense and make sure everything fits, because some of the hardware didn't match, and we had to kind of tweak here and there, but we got it together. So we're putting the blade on, and we're gonna make sure everything's lined up, put the cover on, put some oil in here, put some fuel in the gas tank, and then move on to the hydraulics, which is a whole nother section of instructions. We're basically to the end of the main assembly of the mill. Boxes of blades, actually 4, and there's 3 blades in each box. So yeah, these things you got to watch out for. I'm pretty sure it could be kind of springy and sharp, so I'm just gonna let these things go. And you got to be careful with those. Looks like there's 4 in each box. We got 3 boxes of 4 and another single box. Those things are look like you could do some damage. Might want to get a sharpener when you get the unit too. I don't think we got a sharpener yet. We got a ton of blades. Okay, we finally got the blade adjusted properly and the cover on and everything all dialed in. It took us a while. We had to do a little tweaking here and there to get everything just right. But here we go. Let's start this thing and see how she works. All right. I guess it runs. He's spinning. Everything looks good. Full on sawmill here. Now we got all the attachments to add to it. All the hydraulics and stuff, but looks like it's gonna work pretty good. Our hydraulic tank and engine hooked up with our control panel, and that's pretty straightforward. The instructions are backwards on this connection here. The pictures in the instructions are backwards from how it actually goes. So that was a little bit puzzling. Unless they installed this thing wrong, which we're not even going to really know until we try the hydraulics and make sure they work. So that was confusing, but we'll figure it out. But the instructions, like a lot of the instructions on this thing, are kind of vague and misleading. So you have to have some common sense and general basic mechanicry or a word, something like that, in order to make sure that you get this thing together right. But anyways, we are making progress here and starting to look like a pretty cool machine.
So we've got the log loader installed here. This is the first hydraulic attachment we've played with and just got it routed. This one's on quick disconnects down here so that you can remove this, because when you are on the road, that's not going to work. So this whole assembly just comes off. You pull these pins out and pull this off when you move it. But we got our hydraulic lines tied together, going all the way home. I think Mike's got it tied into the manifold down here. And we're going to go on to the next one. All right, so we're getting the hydraulics dialed in. There have been several iterations of running these lines because we did not read all the instructions like we were supposed to. And we ran the lines right through the middle because there's these really convenient slots right here. But you might notice that our toe boards mount right over those. So we had to rerun a couple of lines. It's no big deal. We got them looking decent. We're just running them loose right now. Come back through with some zip ties once everything's in. But we're down to the last component. We have, this is a clamp right here. That's a rest. That's a rest. The rests just go up and down. The clamp goes side to side and up and down. And then we got our toe boards in. And then we have a log loader right there. But there's a log turner that I think goes right here. We've got the boxes. This is about what all the hydraulic attachments look like. You have a couple of pieces, a little bit of mounting hardware, your lines, and a ram. And hopefully this one goes in pretty easy. So let's take a look at these instructions. Show you what they look like generally. They're in about 8 languages, so that's handy. So you get a little bit of a schematic here that tells you roughly where your component's going to go, where these lines are going to run back to the manifold. It's not super detailed there, but you get a more detailed blowout of the actual turner there, that mechanism. This one's a little more complicated than the other ones, but we'll get it. That's what it looks like all together. There's the lines going into the manifold. You got to make sure those go on the right ones, I've heard. So yeah, through there, and then this is just the isolated hydraulic schematic, and it kind of tells you the joint details and stuff. So it's not super complicated. They're actually fairly vague with the mounting instructions because this is all sort of negotiable. It depends on the exact setup you have, how many bed extensions you're using, and then where you want to center all of the attachments in your cutting deck. So I think we're going to go right here on this one. We'll see how it looks, if it's going to interfere with anything, or ideally we'd like to put the axle right underneath there, but again, I don't know with all these other components like this cross piece. So we're going to get the pieces that we want in place first, and then that axle is going to go where it's going to go. It might just stay there. Don't know.